Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Ward, Strategy and Transformation Practice Leader at Collaborative Solutions. I welcome you to our Ask the Expert series, with today's focus being on best practices for benefits and open enrollment. Let me get started by introducing you to our experts we have supporting us today. First, we have Caitlin Kosak from our CVS Post-Production Consulting Practice. She's located in Charleston, South Carolina, and has been with Collaborative for 2 years. Caitlin has worked in benefits and open enrollment for over 9 years and has experience in a variety of industries, including retail, manufacturing, and technology. Jin Park is located in Atlanta, Georgia, and has worked in our HCM consulting practice for 4 years. He has over 6 years of workday experience in several industries, including higher education, financial services, healthcare and insurance, and hospitality. Next, we have Melissa Campbell. She's located in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and also works in our CVS practice. She's been with Collaborative for 4 years and has over 5 years of workday experience, including time as a workday customer. Her background includes experience in healthcare, entertainment, technology, and service industries. And finally, Erin Davidson joins us from our organizational change and training practice. She's located in Chicago, Illinois, and has over 4 years of experience with Workday. Her industry experience includes government, security, and professional services. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about Collaborative Solutions in case some of you who have joined are not familiar with us. Then I'll turn it over to our experts to share best practices and considerations, and last, we'll open it up for Q&A. Just a reminder on the Q&A, it's worked really well previously to put questions in the question box in the webinar, and we will unmute you to have a robust conversation. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a finance, HR, and student transformation consultancy. We're the longest legacy Workday partner and have served over 800 Workday customers. One of the things we're most proud of is our 98% customer satisfaction score. We're also very proud of our experts and our Workday expertise with over 100 product leads. We do have a global view and have deployed in over 125 countries. Additionally, we have an all-encompassing advisory services across strategy and transformation and change management, and consider ourselves to be the alternative to large SIs by giving you a boutique experience. And finally, we're very proud of all of the awards we have won over the years, declaring us as one of the best places to work. Now I'm going to hand it over to our team of experts to talk us through best practices for benefits and open enrollment. Caitlin, can you tell us about the key considerations for plans offered?
Sure, thank you, Angela. So yeah, to kick us off, I'll provide a little more detailed practices for plans offered during open enrollment. Your open enrollment plan offerings should include all plans in your calendar plan year. Plans in your calendar plan year are plans that require an annual enrollment. All plans that are in a plan year that end need to be included in an event to move those elections into the new plan year. Plans that are typically included in a calendar plan year include plans with employee contributions and choices of coverage, for example, medical, dental, vision, and supplemental life, and regulated annual renewals, such as your FSA and HSA plans. Plans that are typically not included in a calendar plan year are retirement savings and pension plans, as these are generally included in a rolling plan year. If you do not want to include certain plans in your open enrollment, that is certainly possible. But keep in mind the principle that I just mentioned, that if the plan is in a benefit plan year definition that ends, those plans need to be included in some type of event to bring the employee enrollments into the next plan year definition. So for example, if Employee Assistance Program, EAP, was in your 2020 calendar plan year, but you do not want to include it in your 2021 calendar plan year, you can move EAP to your rolling plan year. But the EAP coverage type still needs to be included in your open enrollment event. This will ensure that the coverage is properly moved with the plan from the calendar plan year to the rolling plan year. If you do not want employees to make changes to the plans that you have included in your open enrollment, you can leverage the no changes allowed coverage rule in your enrollment event rules for those specific coverage types. If you are offering new plans for the plan year, you will need to include those in open enrollment. If the new plans are replacing current plans and you want the coverage to carry forward from the old plan to the new plan, you should consider using mapping in the benefit group configuration. If you use mapping, you can then utilize coverage rules in your enrollment event rule to default the employee's current election to the new plan. If the new plan should be an active election, you just simply have to add the plan to the new calendar year and ensure that the old plan that it is replacing is removed. I'll now hand it over to Melissa to discuss preparation.
Thanks, Caitlin. Probably one of the biggest questions we get about open enrollment each year is around preparation and the time and all of the activities involved in preparing for that big event each year. So the time that's needed for the configuration and all of the other preparations that go into having a successful open enrollment depends on the number and complexity of the changes you're making to your plans and your processes for the upcoming plan year. You will want to make sure that you build in time for all of your decisions, your configuration, your testing, and the communications around that process. Generally, we recommend that you start with your open enrollment launch date and work backward so that you can determine a start date for your project. You should build in at least 2 weeks for the planning phase to gather all of your information, your requirements, and your resources together. Another 2 weeks for configuration, and at least 4 weeks for testing. We also advise that your testing should end at least 2 weeks prior to your launch date so that you can deploy your configuration and do some additional validation and testing in your sandbox tenant prior to your launch. That generally, if you put all of those pieces together, it's going to take you about 10 weeks to start your project prior to your launch. It's also important that you gather all the information you need about your plan offerings and changes prior to beginning your configuration. Depending on your plans and your processes, you might also need to gather or load data such as tobacco use, wellness data, benefit annual rates, if you use a bar for calculating your insurance plans. You might also need to gather new plan documents to include in your benefit plan configuration or EOI documents and EOI processes so that you can build those into your enrollment event rules and your business processes. Leading up to your open enrollment launch, you'll want to utilize the Manage Evidence of Insurability Status Report so that you can filter that report for your pending EOI enrollments and adjudicate as many of those as you can before your OE launch. You'll also want to utilize your benefit event status report and filter on your not started and in progress enrollment events. This will help you to finalize as many events prior to your open enrollment launch so that you can give your employees the most up-to-date information defaulted into their open enrollment as possible and reduce the amount of on-hold open enrollment events. And of course, it goes without saying, you should always confirm your eligibility and run enrollment and validation reports to use as comparisons for your OE elections. If you're using Workday's ACA measurement features to track the number of hours your employees work to qualify them under ACA, and your ongoing measurement period aligns with your plan year, be sure to load ACA hours if you're not already using Workday payroll hours, and run your passive event prior to launching your open enrollment. The passive event will generate measurement history for those variable hour employees, and it will also determine which of those employees have worked the required number of hours to qualify for benefits under ACA. This will allow the ACA full-time qualified flag to be included in their record and then include those employees in the most appropriate benefit group for your open enrollment elections. Next, I'm going to pass it back to Caitlin so that she can talk about passive versus active enrollment.
Thanks, Melissa. Passive versus active enrollment is one of the biggest decisions you'll have to make each open enrollment. Active enrollment means that the plan elections will be defaulted to waive if no action is taken by the employee. Employees will not see what they enrolled in for the previous year unless they view benefit elections from the benefits workbook and/or from their profile. If employees do not actively enroll in benefit plans, again, those plans will end. You can configure defaulting within the enrollment event rules. Compared to passive enrollment means that coverage for the plans will be defaulted to what the employee had in the current plan year. Employees will have the option to change plans if they want, so they can change plans, change coverage targets, or waive. But the biggest difference is if employees do not log in and enroll in benefits plans for open enrollment, the plans and coverages will remain as is. Defaulting can also be configured with this in enrollment event rules. You can create open enrollment rules, which are either passive or active or a hybrid of both. For instance, employers generally require that employees re-enroll in FSA and HSA plans each year. Therefore, these would be considered active enrollments, and the plans would be defaulted to waive if the employees don't log in and elect their FSA amount. While other plans may be defaulted to the current elections, which would be passive enrollments for those plans. If you're offering new plans, you do not necessarily need to have an active enrollment. If the new plans are replacing current plans, you may be able to map the new plans to the current plans within the benefit group configuration that I mentioned earlier. So this allows you to default the open enrollment with the coverage that the employee currently has elected. But if the plans are truly new or they're significantly different from the current plans, the open enrollment event will need to have the new plans defaulted to waive for an active enrollment. I'll hand it back over to Melissa to discuss integrations.
Thanks, Caitlin. So one of the least asked about functionality during open enrollment is benefit integrations, and it's probably one of the overlooked aspects of open enrollment. So it's really important that you begin those discussions right away during your project planning. If you're offering new plans during open enrollment that require information be sent to a third party via integration, you'll need to address those requirements very early in the project, especially if the new plan is with a provider for which you do not already have an integration. Developing new integrations can take 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the complexity and resources available for testing. You want to build that into your timeline so that the files can be tested before they are due to be sent to your vendors. If you're adding plans with an existing vendor, and assuming you have an existing integration, you might still need to make edits to that integration to provide for the new plans. Even if you're not adding new plans for your upcoming plan year, you'll need to reach out to your vendors to determine their requirements for providing enrollment information relevant to your new plan year. Some vendors may require an ad hoc OE file be sent in advance so that they can send relevant materials and insurance cards to your employees before the start of their coverage. Others may not need that information in advance. If vendors require an OE file, you will need to determine how they want to receive enrollment information for the remainder of the current plan year. Some vendors will be able to continue receiving your normally scheduled files. Others may require that those files be temporarily stopped and another method for communicating changes between your open enrollment and year end be established. Regardless, all integrations should be reviewed annually to update the schedules for your new plan year. Next, Jen will be talking about testing.
Thank you, Melissa. So for testing, I want to talk about 3 main points. First thing is, what are some important steps that we need to take prior to initiating the testing? And just like, testing is really a joint effort. It's not just from, something that benefit partner has to make sure that it works. And just like Melissa said, one of the area that is overlooked is integration, but also I would say payroll is also sometimes overlooked. So just keep in mind that it's really a joint effort between benefit, HR, integration, and especially payroll. From a config perspective, thanks to Workday, there's actually a really good open enrollment checklist on the community. You can literally just type in open enrollment checklist, or we can send out the link to you guys after the meeting. But basically, it covers every configuration that you should review prior to initiating open enrollment. And some of the bullet points that we have on our checklist is things like your benefit group, making sure that your benefit group still takes account of the correct population that should be having a certain benefit plan. And of course, benefit plan themselves, if you're creating new benefit plan for the upcoming open enrollment, you want to make sure that they're up to date, right? Making sure that they have the right rates, making sure that they have the right vendor, the right role, and all of that. Apart from config, I would say what you need to keep in mind is that making sure that you have a sandbox tenant available. And I've seen a lot of clients that do testing in a production tenant, and that's a red flag. You want to make sure you do all your testing in sandbox. And just like Melissa covered, the length of the testing weeks, how it should be, you want to make sure that you squeeze enough testing into that schedule so that everything works perfectly in sandbox prior to launching your open enrollment in production. So who should be involved? Like I said, it's a joint effort. Mainly, it will be conducted by your benefit SMEs, your subject matter expert for your benefit team. And then once you get to the downstream impact of open enrollment, things like your integration, your payroll, you want to make sure that the payroll leads and integration leads are also involved. And I would also say that you want to have few end users also involved in your testing to make sure that their experience for open enrollment is smooth as possible. So how should you approach these testing process? So there are mainly 4 segments of testing. First is your functional testing. So like I said, going back to your configuration, you want to make sure, or the benefit team want to make sure, all the benefit plan looks correct, all the rate looks correct, all your defaulting is correct, and so on and so forth. And the next segment is your end-to-end testing. Again, benefit is initiating this, but you want to make sure that your integration looks correct, your payroll looks correct at the end of the testing. So making sure you're going through that entire open enrollment cycle from ACM to benefit to integration and payroll. You want to make sure all of the area is covered. And the third is again kind of goes back to the integration. You want to make sure that your open enrollment files to the vendor is correct. You're making sure all your catch-up transaction is correct with the vendor, and so on and so forth. And lastly, like I mentioned, sandbox, right? Your final stage of testing should be held in sandbox. You don't want to push anything in your production tenant that haven't been tested in the sandbox. And keep in mind, when you do your open enrollment, it impacts mass population. So you don't want to launch this in production without testing in the sandbox. All right. For the next section is managing open enrollment. I'll pass it back to Caitlin.
Thank you, Jen. So open enrollment is a stressful and busy time of year, and just because OE has started, that does not mean that new hires and life events and day-to-day benefits management will end. With this, you can take certain steps to manage open enrollment and make the process a little easier. Some of these things include finalizing open benefit events and managing stale evidence of insurability cases. This will help to reduce issues with open enrollment events being placed on hold or EOI considerations complicating your enrollments. Also, a timely approval of events that are in progress but cannot be finalized prior to initiating open enrollment will help. Pretty much the fewer benefit events that you have in progress before, during, and after open enrollment, the easier your job as a benefits administrator or benefits partner will be. And also will ensure less confusion for your employees. If you have waiting periods for newly hired employees, you can utilize the exclude workers with waiting periods checkbox when initiating open enrollment. This will evaluate employee eligibility, and it excludes those new hires for which all benefit plan coverage begin dates due to waiting periods will fall on or after the beginning of the new plan year. This, like I said, will reduce the confusion that can sometimes occur when new hires are asked to complete both their new hire enrollments and OE in the same period. For those hires that do not have waiting periods, they can expect to complete both a new hire enrollment for benefits in the current plan year and also an OE event to choose elections for the new plan year. Next, I'll go into a little detail about coordination of events, including new hire enrollments in some scenarios. For events that are initiated before open enrollment with event dates prior to plan year begin, OE will be placed on hold until that event is completed. When the event is completed, OE is taken off hold and elections made in the previous event will be included as defaults in the OE event. For events that are initiated during OE with event dates prior to the plan year begin, OE will be placed on hold again until that event is completed. And when the event is completed, OE is taken off hold and elections made in the previous event will again be included as defaults for OE. Events that are initiated after OE is finalized with an event date prior to plan year begin. Once that event is completed, OE is rescinded and a new event is automatically created that is a reprocessed event. Elections made within that event will be included as the defaults for the reprocessed event. As far as administration, some items to expect during your open enrollment period and into the new plan year include: you should be monitoring on-hold events and in-progress events. Review your benefit event status report that was mentioned earlier to monitor open events that may impact OE completion. Encourage employees to complete open events as quickly as possible and inform them that they may need to complete a separate OE event again if necessary based on the scenarios that we just reviewed. Utilize the View Workers No Longer Eligible for Open Enrollment report. You can use this to cancel or rescind the OE event for which those workers are no longer eligible. And also utilize the Eligible Workers with No Open Enrollment Events report to add those newly eligible employees to the appropriate OE event. And finally, when to close and finalize open enrollment. Like we mentioned, monitor your open enrollment status report regularly throughout your enrollment effective date. You will close open enrollment at the end of the window that you've designated to your employees that they can make elections. So when you close open enrollment, remember that closing open enrollment means that the change benefit OE task will no longer be available for employees in their inbox. Elections can still be made by the benefits partner and benefits administrators, and open enrollment events can still be canceled. After you close OE, the next step is you'll want to finalize open enrollment. You want to finalize OE after all of your validations and audits are completed, but before open enrollment files are due to the vendors and before payroll needs to be calculated. So remember, when you finalize open enrollment, that means that elections can still be corrected by the benefits partners and benefits admins, but just think of the downstream impacts again to your vendors and payroll files. Open enrollment events can still be rescinded after they're finalized. And if elections were not submitted, that's when your defaults will be populated. You should be prepared to close and finalize open enrollment several times after your initial OE window ends. It's not a one-time thing. You will close and finalize multiple times, and you could be closing and finalizing OE into your new plan year until all hires and coverage changes have completed their elections. Now I'll hand it over to Yearend to review OE communication tools.
Thanks, Caitlin, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, or good afternoon where you are. Thanks for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit about communications for open enrollment. So something to consider is that open enrollment has happened before. It's good to rely on existing methods that you've been using for open enrollment, and maybe just think about some ways to enhance that with Workday, especially if this is your first time doing open enrollment with Workday. So definitely rely on your existing channels, whether that is emails, that is all employee meetings, that is manager messages, webinars, etc. But be thinking about what from your Workday implementation you can lean on to enhance your communications. So for example, if you stood up or are standing up a Change Champion network or a Change Agent network with your Workday deployment, something to think about is, can the Change Champions help with reminders and messaging around open enrollment? Can they be equipped with some talking points to kind of remind their groups and reinforce the fact that open enrollment will need to be completed? Another thing to think about is if you've set up any kind of Workday Internet or SharePoint site for your Workday deployment, think about if some communication and training materials can be posted on that site specific to using Workday for open enrollment. It'll be a site likely that employees are used to going to when they have Workday related questions. A couple other things within Workday, you can create announcements that have specific information for employees about open enrollment. That could be reminders that will show up for employees when they first log into Workday, just there on their homepage. There'll be a nice announcement that's a good spark for employees to be thinking about open enrollment. And then when it comes to reminders, there's a nice delivered report within Workday called the Open Enrollment Status Report. And reminder emails can be sent from that report within the enrollment process itself, and they can be sent specifically to folks that have not yet started their open enrollment process or have it in progress. So that's very helpful. And then, of course, keep in mind other tools that Workday provides with dashboards and applications where information about open enrollments can be housed and employees can go to for resources. We'll talk a little bit more about change management and training here in a couple minutes, but right now I'm going to pass it over to Melissa to talk about other related year-end activities with open enrollment.
Thanks, Yearend. While not specific to open enrollment, there are some year-end activities that we all have to go through as benefits administrators or benefits partners that marry itself well to including it in your open enrollment checklist each year. So it's a good idea every year around the open enrollment time to review your passive events, especially the schedules for those passive events. The schedule for all of these events are required to have an end date when they are configured. Review each of those schedules to make sure that the end date for all of those passive events is later than the end of your next calendar year. This will ensure the passive events do not stop running without you knowing it. If you use ACA measurement features, you'll need to make sure that you do a few steps to get ready for your next measurement period. You'll do this during your administrative period, but after your OE completion, you're going to want to create your new measurement period eligibility role and the associated measurement period role. You'll also need to update your ACA passive event role to include this new measurement period role, and update your affordable care reporting configuration page to include the new role and look back dates. Creating all of this new configuration pieces will inform Workday of the appropriate rules to use when creating your measurement history and benefit events during the plan year. It'll also, by providing that information with the new rule and look back dates on your Affordable Care Reporting configuration page allows Workday to inform the Workday delivered ACA reports and ACA dashboards as expected. And of course, the one thing that we don't want to overlook is preparing for your ACA filing at the end of each year. Some things to prepare and consider is updating the federal poverty levels and affordable care coverage standards on the Affordable Care Reporting configuration page. Reaching out to your COBRA vendor to obtain enrollments in COBRA if those are required to be included in your 1095-C form data. If you provide medical benefits to your retirees, you may also need to gather that information from your third-party provider so that it can be reported as well. Consult with your legal counsel to determine if there are any changes in the ACA guidelines that might require configuration changes from your previous years, such as safe harbors, certifications of eligibility, or companies that need to be included in your ALE groups. Consider how you're going to print and mail your 1095-Cs. Are you going to be doing that internally, or are you going to use an external vendor? Plan ahead so that you have the right resources, as using an external vendor might require reports or integrations to send that information to the third party. And remember that Workday releases the specific tax year configuration features each year. Therefore, you'll need to build those for each tax year. You'll need to build your ACA 1094-C company configuration. You'll need to look at your ACA LE group and your member order, your safe harbor configuration, and your ACA connector for the IRS transmission. Angela?
Apologies, I was on mute. Thank you, Melissa. Just a couple more things that we want to throw out there for consideration, and then I do see there's a couple of questions coming in, so we'll make sure to have some time to answer those as well. So while I'm speaking, if a few of you have more questions, please feel free to put those into the question box, and then we will try to address those and unmute you if we need to have more conversation. So just really quicker on service delivery. This is an item that, a lot of customers don't think about until they're close to ready to open the open enrollment process, or they're kind of midstream. And so this year, with a lot of our customers struggling with how to handle COVID and most of their employees working remotely that aren't used to doing that, they're evaluating more tools and options that can help meet the employee where they are and improve that employee experience. So you want to make sure you're taking time to think about, how do we need to do it different this year than we've had to do it in other years? And looking at, are there additional tools that we can take advantage of? Can we use chatbots, or can we use some mobile functionality? Or are there things that we can do as far as providing information and aids in applications that people are using native to their workspace? And then taking some time to think about, there might be more questions because people can't just pop over to someone's office and ask them quickly. So how do we handle, actually addressing questions that people have? Do we still need to have the same types of questions going to our shared services or our benefits SMEs or some of our third-party providers? Do we need to change in what capacity we're using those different groups? And then taking a deeper look at our processes. And when you think about, again, everyone is remote and trying to accommodate folks, or you might have some people coming back to the offices and others not. Thinking through, do we need to govern things differently? Do we need to change how that process works so that we can better accommodate? And so from there, Erin, if you want to go ahead and round us out with change management and training.
Absolutely. Thanks, Angela. So yeah, great considerations that you mentioned there, and just adding on to that, with change management specifically, some additional considerations, thinking about timing. When do we need to start messaging to employees, and keeping in mind that there's a lot of information going on right now with our current landscape with COVID-19. So how can we make messages really clear, concise, to the point with the key information and calls to actions that employees need to know specific to open enrollment? A couple other considerations are, if you're moving to a new system if Workday this is your first time using Workday for open enrollment, thinking about what will happen with the active versus passive enrollment. Will employees need to do anything differently in Workday than they have in the past? And clearly articulating those calls to actions, those process changes, and making sure, as Angela said, that employees know who to go to with questions and they have those accurate avenues. So if they need to go to a certain person for questions about Workday, that's separate than the person they might go to, or the persons they might go to for questions about plan offerings, making sure that's clearly articulated so employees don't have to spend too much time spinning their wheels looking for that, the accurate information. And then a big call out around training. What we typically see with training is kind of a just-in-time approach for open enrollment. So what are the resources that employees can access on demand at the time of need when they're going through open enrollment? So with that, job aids are really key. And when we think about job aids training for open enrollment, specific to Workday, we're thinking about how does the employee go through the open enrollment process, and then how do they view their open enrollment elections after the fact. So the job aids are typically focused on that, as opposed to the plan information and benefits information itself. Another thing that we often see done with customers is a quick on-demand video that kind of goes through the open enrollment process and how to view those elections. And then, of course, if you're already doing webinars around the open enrollment time, talking about your benefits plans, consider including information about Workday in those webinars with maybe a demo of how to use the system in the process. The last thing I'll say about training is I do know that Workday is changing their benefits experience, the interface, the way it looks for users. So if you have done open enrollment in the past and already have training materials developed based on how it looked in years prior, you might want to take a look to see if you will plan to opt in to the new open enrollment experience that's available. And if so, you will want to likely update your training materials to reflect that. So we can definitely include more information on that in the follow-up to this webinar. Awesome. So Angela, I'll kick it back to you for questions from the group.
Thanks, Erin. It looks like we do have a few questions that have come in. So it looks like Marley has a couple questions around, can you clarify what we should do if an employee starts in December and open enrollment is closed and finalized, and their new hire benefit elections don't start until January? How do we ensure that they don't get both the new hire benefit event and open enrollment? Caitlin, do you want to take that one?
Sure, thanks, Angela. I can take that one. Turn my camera on here. Sure, so coordination of events can definitely be confusing around this time of year. So I'd like to try to think of bucketing your employees into different groups. So who are those new hires or life events that happen right before OE is initiated, but they haven't completed their events yet? Those new hires or life events that are initiated when OE is in progress. And then those new hires or life events that have events initiated after open enrollment is already finalized. So this scenario fits into that third bucket. So again, you're requesting a new hire in December, so their new hire event is initiated after open enrollment has already been closed and finalized, but before 1/1, which is the OE event date. So the new hire will first receive their new hire event, so that's expected. They should complete and enroll in their new hire event. And then as soon as that event is completed, their original open enrollment event will be reprocessed and a new OE event is automatically created as a reprocessed event. So the employee will have to complete that, but elections made in that event will, elections made in their new hire event will be included as defaults for the reprocessed event. Melissa, I don't know if you have anything else to add or any other clarification for that point.
No, just to clarify that if your new hire enrollment includes waiting periods, specifically waiting periods, then you can use that functionality when you initiate open enrollment to exclude those folks from your open enrollment. But again, that is only for those with waiting periods. So you can expect most of your new hires will have to do both events, both the new hire and the open enrollment event.
Marley, did that answer your question? Okay, I see that she said yes, thank you. And do you still have a question about coordinating events, or did that answer some of that as well?
That answered some of it, thank you.
You're welcome. It looks like we have another question from Murray Douglas asking about Workday and if they've improved the new tile-based workflow to better handle cross-dependency rules between life and AD&D plans. Jen, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Good question, because Workday just covered this during our knowledge sharing session yesterday. They've improved several, I think, concerns and just complaints that we had previously from the customer. They're looking to release a lot of new things, and I think one of the things that they fixed now is that cross-dependency rule not popping up previously when you click into the tiles, but now, like when you click into HSA tile, it should immediately give you that warning or the cross-plan issue message. And then I think some additional information we got from yesterday is you will still have the option to opt out until, I believe, 2021 March. I think that's when they will completely get rid of the Workday 32 option. So just keep in mind and making sure you're planning your regression testing according to that schedule. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Thanks, Jen. Murray, did we answer your question for you?
Yeah, I think so. I'll certainly look forward to testing it and seeing whether our rules actually appear and go forward from there. So thank you.
You bet.
All right, great. Thank you. It looks like that's all the time we have for today. So thank you very much for joining. We will send out an FAQ document, which will have all of this information and the recording to everyone who's registered. Thanks so much.